Is it
I
two?
got it on the calendar. If I cut it on, it will ring by the time I start talking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, got that do not disturb on.
Yeah, I used to get that thing going. I used to cut it down, but then it rang one time anyway, so I was like, well, I'm just gonna cut it off.
Right.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Town of Apex Planning Board meeting. Today's date is January 12th, 2026. I'd like to have the invocation, if we could please bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us together today with a shared purpose and responsibility. Grant us wisdom to see clearly, patience to listen fully, and courage to make decisions that serve the greater good of the town of Apex. Bless our discussions with clarity and unity so that every plan we make reflects fairness, integrity, and care for our community. Guide our hearts to remain humble, our minds to stay open, and our actions to honor now. May we work together in harmony, respecting each voice and valuing each perspective, so that the outcomes of the meeting bring lasting benefit and peace. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, is there any items of information from staff?
Yes, we have a few items. So I wanted to, make the announcement that Keith Braswell is our new chair. So he's a long-standing member of the planning board, and we're happy to have him as the chair. A new vice chair will be appointed by town council tomorrow night, so we'll make that announcement next time. And then I wanted to let everybody know that we had talked about Tim not being on planning board anymore, but it was just that he wasn't going to be chair anymore. The ETJ member is held over until a new appointment is made to council. That's what the policy is. So if any of you get to the point where it's the end of your appointed term, if a new person has not been appointed, then you are carried over. So if you attend, you can participate just like you do now. If you don't attend, you'll be marked absent, but for purposes of a quorum, you'll continue to serve. And then Amanda is going to introduce Renita Stanley.
So Renita was not able to join us last month, and so I wanted to formally introduce her, read her bio. Renita joined the Apex Planning Board as a student representative, bringing a youth perspective to discussions about the town's growth and future development. She's a 17-year-old junior at Green Level High School and has lived in Apex for most of her life. At Green Level High, she is actively involved in her school. She's actively involved in her school and community with a strong interest in civic engagement, local government, and community planning. Her role on the planning board is to represent the voices of Apex's younger residents while learning about municipal decision-making and contributing thoughtful input on issues affecting the town's future. So, formally welcome Renita to the board.
Welcome, Renita.
Thank you. And then I added this just before the meeting started. I wanted to just publicly announce a warning regarding scam invoices. We had this happen last month, and it happened again this month to basically every applicant that was on the agenda, where they were getting a fake invoice saying that they owed the town money and asking for payments to be sent via wire transfers. The town does not collect planning-related fee payments via wire transfer. So I just want everyone in the audience and out in the public to know, please call our main number if you have any questions about any kind of payments. It's 919-249-3426. And again, we do not take wire transfers, so be very skeptical. And we don't do invoices, actually. It's part of the application. And so if you get an invoice, it's 99.9% sure it's a scam. But give us a call and let us look into it for you if you have any questions.
I have one question for you.
Yep.
Yesterday, I received an email to All Planning about some sort of an investor type thing that I don't know whether you might have gotten it or not. So if I get something like that, is it best just to forward it to you?
That sounds like a scam, and we didn't receive it. And so All Planning Board, if it's a real All Planning Board, if it's the actual real one, it would have gone to several staff members in addition to you all. But anything, we're not sending out emails about investments.
Right,
it's a scam.
I know.
You don't need to send it to us because sometimes those links will have viruses in them.
Okay,
just
so just
delete them. You can let us know. Don't forward it. Just let us know if you'd like, but just delete. Okay. We're not asking you for money.
I know.
So, all right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. All right.
Thank you, Diane. So now we'll move the meeting into public comment. If you have not already done so, over to your left, you can sign in to speak on agenda items and non-agenda items for tonight. The purpose of the public comment is to allow public to speak on items that do not appear in the agenda. Any member of the public wishing to comment on public hearing items will be called at the appropriate time later in the agenda. We do ask that you please sign in if you do wish to speak. All comments must be limited to 3 minutes. If there's a large number of speakers for one particular item, we ask that the representative be selected for the entire group and limit that comments to 9 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to speak for tonight's public comment? Is anyone signed up? I don't think so. Okay, then, we will close public comment. And we will move on consent item number 1, minutes from the December 8, 2025 regular meeting. I assume everybody has had a chance to review. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Jeff,
Second by Christie.
second by Christie. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All that oppose? Motion carried. Okay, now we'll move into public hearing section. For item number 1, Joshua? Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Joshua Killian here to present rezoning case 25 CZ 17 Smith Road. This rezoning is located in the southeast quadrant of the town of Apex's jurisdiction. The parcel to be rezoned is currently 5.33 acres and is a wooded lot with no known ponds or streams or any other kind of water features existing there. The tree vegetation that you see, the southern half of the parcel, did not appear on aerial imagery as wooded until about 2006. So that stand of trees is a little bit younger, but as you can see, it's a fully wooded site currently. The land to the north of this parcel is zoned rural residential, and I will refer to it later as the now closed Sorrel landfill. To the east and south of this rezoning is a continuation of that rural residential zoning with existing single-family homes and a cemetery located on this specific parcel here, located to the south. The land to the west has been developed as single-family homes, part of the Horton Park PUD, so that's Zone Plan Unit Development Conditional Zoning. And the parcel to be rezoned here is currently rural residential. The applicant is proposing to rezone this parcel to medium-density conditional zoning. The applicant is proposing a maximum of 17 residential units, which equates to about 3.2 units per acre. Consistent with the Town of Apex's affordable housing incentive zoning policy, this rezoning has chosen to designate 10% of the total units to be sold to families earning no more than 120% of the Raleigh NC MSA area median income. With 17 units, this would equate to 2 affordable units on site. The applicant held neighborhood meetings on September 29th and December 16th, 2025, and those reports are in your agenda packet. A Wake County Public Schools letter of impact was received for this rezoning and indicates that all grade levels have sufficient capacity for future students. Rezoning case 25 CZ17 was exempt from meeting with the Environmental Advisory Board per the UDO. However, the applicant is offering 12 environmental conditions from the EAB suggested conditions worksheet. As mentioned earlier, this property is adjacent to the Sorrel landfill that closed in 1994. At the time of the Horton Park Plan Unit Development rezoning in 2017, staff were unaware of North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, or NCDEQ, about their concerns for development adjacent to the former landfill properties. At the initial pre-application meeting for this rezoning, staff made the applicant and their agent aware of this concern from NCDEQ and requested that they coordinate with North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality staff to help mitigate their concerns. The agent, Patrick Kiernan, who's in the audience, did meet with the NCDEQ on November 14th, 2025, and provided 4 zoning conditions as a result of their meeting. Jacqueline Drummond, a hydrologist with the NCDEQ Division of Waste Management, provided feedback to the applicant on the conditions, and the NCDEQ Solid Waste Section Chief, Jason Watkins, has provided a statement acknowledging the applicant's proposed conditions as addressing their concerns to the extent feasible. Mr. Watkins also requests that if there are any site assessments that have been done on this parcel, that they be shared as part of the public record for decision-making processes, and recommends that future projects provide the same if they are available. Here are the 4 conditions on the screen here, so in case you'd like to know which ones are specific to the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality's concerns. And I can come back to this if we need to. The 2045 land use map identifies this parcel as medium density residential, and the proposed zoning district is consistent with that land use classification. Planning staff does recommend rezoning case 25CZ17 with the conditions as offered by the applicant. The rezoning is reasonable and in the public interest as the proposed density and uses are consistent with the adjacent development to the west. At least 10% of the units shall be designated as affordable housing, and conditions have been offered to address the proximity to the closed Sorrel landfill. If you have any questions for myself, I'll be happy to answer, and the applicant is in the audience.
I did have a question because I did call. Have there been any site-specific environmental work that talks about the methane or the landfill gas and how it's traveled on this property? Anything that they currently have, and if they do have it, has that been made publicly available? That was my question.
To staff's knowledge, there has been none, but the applicant can answer if they've done any preliminary testing on their side.
Thank you, Joshua. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Board. My name is Patrick Kiernan with Jones & Knosson Engineering, 221 North Salem Street, and I'm here representing Vim LLC, the applicant for this rezoning. As always, thank you for all your help throughout the process. I think you accurately represented everything on this rezoning. I'm not gonna, repeat all the same stuff that you did. There was a couple things I wanted to dig into, but just to start with your question, the only studies that I'm aware of, NCDEQ provided us with their portal that has the monitoring wells, different methane monitoring wells that are near the landfill. So there's one that is, I'm not sure if it's on the Horton Park PUD side of the property line or if it's on the Sorrel landfill, but it's a couple hundred feet further west from our property. But they had detected high levels of methane at that monitoring well, which is sort of what instigated this whole process, was that they were seeing levels that were higher than what they're comfortable with. What can we do to mitigate those concerns? So that was really the main thing that I wanted to discuss with everybody, was just we kind of did everything that we could within our power to mitigate their concerns and kind of help them feel comfortable with 17 additional lots. Now, obviously, based on the layout, there's only, depending on how it proceeds, but 4 to 5 lots would back up to the landfill, as compared. It's similar to if you look west on Horton Park, it would just be an extension of Percussion Drive with a few more homes that back up to it. But as Joshua mentioned, one of the resultant conditions from our conversations with DEQ was basically a 50-foot landscape buffer along the northern property line, whereas Horton Park had a 25-foot buffer. So our homes will be an additional 25 feet further in from the landfill. So that was one of the ways that we mitigated their concerns. And then the other two were providing vapor barriers underneath the crawl space and the slabs. And then each home would be installed with a methane gas monitoring device So if those levels internal to the home do reach a certain level, then the alarms would go off and the homeowners would be notified. The other kind of main topic that I wanted to bring up was just the transportation component, how the only access to this rezoning is through Percussion Drive, which is a Town of Apex collector street on their transportation map. But seeing as there are no external access points out to Smith Road or Gladsong, the only access comes from Percussion Drive. So we did consult with a traffic engineer with Ramey Kemp to do a traffic assessment memo, and he essentially analyzed the trips that would be generated from our 17 maximum homes compared to the trips that are produced from Horton Park and their internal network. And per his conclusions, it was extremely minimal, the effect that it would have. So I just want to make note of that. Obviously, going through another subdivision is something to at least, analyze and make sure we're comfortable with. And I think based on just the low density that we have and the few number of homes that we are proposing, it's a negligible effect. So anyway, those are the only specific couple things. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And thanks again.
I do have one question. The methane gas monitoring device, does it work similar to like radon where it ventilates outside of the home? Is that how that system would?
That's a good question. Mr. Watkins, who Joshua mentioned, he's the one that suggested these, and he said he didn't mention that they do ventilate anything out, but he said it's similar to typical methane devices. But he said there are some that pick up all gases, not just methane too. So obviously that's not being specified in our conditions. But that was something that we told them we would continue to work with them on, just whatever they suggest. We're happy to implement.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
It's a minor question, but I saw in the neighborhood meeting that the cemetery has an egress already. Is that through a private property, or is that?
It's actually the seller of this rezoning is the landowner to the south as well, and that cemetery is in their family name as well. So he did bring it up during the neighborhood meeting as far as would access be provided through our subdivision, but then throughout the meeting it kind of went full circle, and then he realized that there is access from his own property.
Okay.
So since it's in their family, it seemed really more appropriate that any access would come from the south rather than internal from our subdivision. So he made no request that we add anything.
Same family that is going to be able to provide access.
Yeah.
So, okay.
All right. That's my understanding based on my conversations with him.
Okay. Thank you.
Where on the site is that cemetery?
It is right. It's this little polygon right here. And then Mr. Wright's house that he resides in is this one right here.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Thank you all.
Thank you, Patrick. Guess now we will open public comment for item number 1. And on the list, we have Mr. Dwight. Please state your name and address, please.
Dwight Wright, 8140 Smith Road in Apex. Good afternoon, Chair and other planning board members. I am the owner of that piece of property. I just wanted to bring forth that this piece of property that the applicant is seeking to rezone should have closed last year in December. My concern with it as the owner, the builder, and the applicant has relied on me that they're going to develop this piece of property. They have extended the closing date once again, and it is of definitely very much of importance to me. I do not, as the owner, want to carry a annexation, tax-wise levied on me. I'm just coming forth today to the planning board because I relied on what the applicant and the builder and the purchaser buyer has told me. I'm just hoping that they can, and you can possibly help me with requiring them to close before a annexation is put in forth on this piece of property. That's as much as I have to today. The closing date has been extended. Once again, the closing date is today. A couple of days ago, I was informed that they wanted to exercise and extend the closing date once again until February. I'm just hoping that as the builder, they, without going through an annexation in my name, that this property can be closed so the annexation can be levied on them.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dwight. As I do not have anyone else signed up to speak, we will close public comment. And we will bring it to the board for discussion and a possible motion.
I have a question. This, I guess, is for Diane or Amanda. Can we make that a term of the rezoning that they would pay the property taxes going forward
That
if it's
can't-
not done in this calendar year?
That cannot be a zoning condition. So that is a private issue between the seller and the applicant that needs to be worked out before town council takes action. This is currently scheduled for the January 27th. I believe that's the date, town council meeting.
Okay.
So,
Okay, thank you.
I did just want to note that the annexation has not been applied for yet. This rezoning is in the town's ETJ. So the annexation is not required until we as staff are ready to sign construction plans, which would have to be master subdivision plan process and then construction drawings before annexation can be or needs to be approved. And the application has not been yet put in. And the biggest key is that the owner does have to sign a wet signature for annexation applications. And so long as Mr. Wright doesn't sign the annexation application, then I don't believe that this would come up as an issue.
Joshua, I'm glad you're back. I had one more question about transportation on Percussion Drive, which is where they'll have their entrance. I'm looking at the thoroughfare and collector street plan. They will also be required to stub out to on the east side of the property as part of this.
Correct.
Okay.
And just as a note, if you look at the plan, the road does curve slightly to the south. In conversations with other staff, the buffer that's currently shown on Horton Park is 25 feet. Understanding that buffer is going to be basically doubled to 50 feet on that northern side, the lots are going to either have to become less deep north to south, so that the alignment can stay generally in that same area. And should the design not be able to work in that way, then a transportation map amendment may be requested during subdivision plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Bruce?
None for Bruce.
Josh.
I'm sorry.
Bruce
My bad.
Joshua, Bruce Joshua.
Any other questions for this gentleman? Well, this is the first time I've seen methane mitigation. I'm glad to see that they've worked with staff to try to mitigate that.
Yes, I agree. Cooperation with DEQ as well, and it's always pleasant to see a Wake County Public School statement saying that there's adequate capacity
Yeah.
for schools.
Yeah, that's a change, isn't it?
That's rare. Is that a motion, Elise?
That is a motion to approve case number 25CZ17.
We have a motion from Melissa for approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second. Mary.
Mary has a second. All in approval say aye.
Aye.
All that oppose? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Joshua. All right, that brings us into new business. Item number 1, possible motion regarding various amendments to the UDO related to temporary turnarounds in connection with substreets.
Good evening.
Hello, Bruce.
Hello. Good evening, board and chair. How are you today? All right. So we have a couple of UDO amendments to present to you today. The first one we have before you is amendments to section 7.2.1, design standards for streets, for landscaping, screening, and general buffering requirements, and also sections chapter 13 and 4 for transportation definitions. The reasons for these requests today are to approve a temporary turnaround and a temporary public access easement as part of the UDO moving forward. The staff are proposing this to provide some clarification and to add standards for what a temporary turnaround should look like in the town of Apex as well. The first section of the code that'll be amended today, again, is in Article 7 under Design Standards and Streets. We have provided Section I for temporary turnarounds. A temporary turnaround shall be provided at the terminus of any stub street. So you may have seen them now. Current code requires a little cul-de-sac bulb be in place where their stub street might be at. The challenge with that is it remains until the adjacent property is developed and it connects that substreet again. We didn't have anything in our code to really require anyone to remove that excess right of way, and so sometimes you would have a substreet connected and then you have this excess right of way that would still have to be maintained by the town, and it created some issues, especially in some safety concerns with parking and things like that. So what this essentially implements is that they will have the option to do a temporary turnaround, and there will be designs set for that, and then there'll be a fee in lieu that'll be assigned for this temporary turnaround. So when the development does come into adjacent property, they'll be able to use that money to remove temporary turnaround, build it to the standards it was approved at, and connect that substreet as well. And so we'll go through some of the provisions of that. This applicability, just so you know, these provisions in the subsection shall only apply to temporary turnarounds approved after January 27, 2026. Any current situations with temporary turnarounds will be kind of grandfathered in at this time. They would be required for easements and designs. The temporary turnaround shall be placed in what's called a temporary public access easement that'll meet the standards of temporary public access easement that's also being added here, or it can be placed within a dedicated right-of-way until such time the right-of-way is extended, like we talked about when an adjacent development might come in. Again, we mentioned the fee in lieu. A fee in lieu will be provided pursuant to the fee in lieu for stub streets in Article 7 as well. And then, like I said, it will be used to remove the temporary turnaround prior to master subdivision final plat or site plan final approval is when the fee in lieu will be required. Again, we touched on this. There's removal and restoration. The developer of the adjacent property, again, will come in and they will do the removal and restoration and bring the area back up to the standards that it was approved at. This could include street extensions, and typically cross sections for roads, sidewalks, utilities, and maybe some landscaping and things like that to be put back in. There will be use limitations. Temporary turnarounds should not be used for parking and or driveways, no basketball hoops, things like that. You know, obviously this is still part of the right of way, and I know sometimes people like to use these for other methods and reasons. There will be signage posted. The temporary turnaround, a clear visible street sign for the town of Apex's standards will be provided, letting them know that there is a future substreet connection planned for this area. The size and dimensions of the temporary turnaround will comply with the size and dimensional standards set forth in the town of Apex's standard specifications and design details. For platting, any plats containing these stub streets shall include the following note, essentially that the street system shown on this plat includes one or more stub streets that are intended to connect to adjacent property, and when such property is developed, these connections are required to promote the efficient flow and distribution of traffic and to provide additional points of access for emergency vehicles. As far as materials, the temporary turnaround shall be built to the town of Apex's standards, again, per the standard specifications and standard details. And then in the future, more amendments, temporary public access easement. This is a new public access easement. So where the street is terminated at the end, The development, it will create a substreet. A temporary public access easement shall be provided. The temporary public access easement shall be of sufficient size to allow for the necessary construction and future conversion of the roadway to the through street. Any slope easements, construction easements, and/or right-of-way dedication needed to construct the future roadway connection shall be dedicated. The temporary public access easement shall follow one of the following methods. Number one, if the adjacent land is owned by the subdivider, a temporary turnaround can be provided within the temporary public access easement on such adjacent land. Temporary turnaround shall meet the standards again of the temporary turnaround section that we covered before. Number two, the subdivider may provide the required turnaround on one of the last lots or common area nearest to the adjacent land and with frontage on the temporary substreet through the use of a temporary public access easement dedicated to the town, and shall meet again the standards of this previous section we talked about for temporary turnarounds. There's an amendment to Article 8 for landscaping, buffering, and screening. Under general buffering requirements, additional language has been added to essentially allow public access easements to encroach a little into required buffers. So this is for the temporary turnaround to be able to encroach into that, and so that later on it can be connected. And also additional wording has been added that here when a public utility and/or public access easement, again, just reiterating that fact. Chapter 13 for transportation definitions, we've added a definition for a temporary turnaround. A temporary turnaround area constructed in accordance with the Town of Apex's standards, located within temporary public access easement or public right-of-way with the way at the terminus of a street that is planned for future extension. Here is a little reference of what the detail might look like for a temporary turnaround. In this image, you're seeing what's referred to as a T or hammerhead turnaround, and you're seeing it in the various aspects that it could be configured here. You can see the property line, perimeter buffer, temporary access easement that surrounds it there. This is for reference only. This will have to be approved by council at a separate time. If you have any questions related to that, I'm here to answer questions, and also we have some transportation and team as well.
Any questions for Bruce?
I have a question, Bruce. Is this item linked to last month's comment from Mr. Roach?
Yes, it was linked to last month's comment from Mr. Roach, where we worked with Mr. Roach to address the language that was a little bit vague. I can show you where we adjusted that here. Under number 4, the language was a little more vague, and it said something to the effect of the developer would have to come in and provide any upgrades or necessary requirements per the town's regulations. There was a little bit, it left a little bit of ambiguity. So working with Mr. Roach, we came in and we added the specifics that are required by the UDO for street extensions, including the roadway cross-section, sidewalks, and utilities would be what we focus on as part of that removal and restoration.
I believe there was also some reference to the town Apex standard specifications and standard details for the hammerhead completed. I guess that would also has been addressed.
Yes,
Allow the engineers to use it at the same time. That's also been addressed as well.
Yes, sir.
Right. Any other questions? Thank you, Bruce. We'll bring it back to the board for discussion. Or possible motion.
I'll make a motion to approve. Jeff?
Motion to approve from Jeff,
I got second. Sarah?
second from Sarah. All approved, say aye.
Aye.
All that oppose? Motion carried.
All right.
Hang out with us.
Couple more UDO amendments for you today.
Great.
The item you just approved will be going before Town Council tomorrow at their regular session meeting. These items here that I'll present to you today will be scheduled to go before them at the 20th to 27th meeting of January this month.
Okay.
For the first one here, this is at their September 18th and November 6th Planning Committee meeting. They directed town staff to prepare a new UDO amendment addressing the use of artificial turf on non-residential sites, consistent with state statutes and other built-on requirements that the town has. So staff has worked together to come up with these. The amendments are as follows. In Chapter 8, under General Landscaping Design Standards, we've added a section under H, artificial turf. And as an alternative to grass, artificial turf meeting the requirements of the state statute there, which is 143-214.7D, may be permitted as pervious where it is used to enhance site durability, minimize erosion, or address maintenance constraints, provided it is installed to ensure adequate drainage and long-term performance. Artificial turf shall be a natural grass color and shall be limited to areas where the planning director or designee determines that the natural vegetation is impractical to establish or sustain, including but not limited to areas such as athletic fields, narrow pedestrian corridors between buildings or courtyards, roof terraces, shaded gathering areas, small or confined areas subject to high foot traffic, or common areas intended for a high volume of foot traffic as well. Additionally, artificial turf that does not meet the requirements of the state statute may be permitted as impervious surface, provided that the total built upon area does not exceed the limitations in section 5.1, table of intensity and dimensional standards. So there you might be familiar, there might be a max built upon area of like 50, 60%. If they were to use artificial turf that was considered impervious, that would count towards that number, that percentage there, so they couldn't go beyond that with their artificial turf. Again, artificial turf shall be prohibited within required landscape buffers, resource conservation areas, privately owned play lawns, riparian buffers, and floodplains, and any area prohibited by state law, and shall not be credited towards required landscaping materials or minimum planting area calculations. Existing installations of artificial turf installed prior to January 27, 2026 may remain in place provided it is maintained in good condition and does not create drainage, erosion, or stormwater compliance issues. And existing artificial turf shall be subject to the following provisions. Number 1, maintenance. Existing turf shall be maintained in a good condition, free of tears, fading, deterioration, or drainage deficiencies. Expansion of the turf area beyond the original installed footprint shall not be permitted except in conformance with the current ordinance requirements. Under terms defined, we've added a definition for artificial turf. Artificial turf means a surface composed of synthetic fibers designed to replicate the appearance and function of natural grass. It is typically used in locations where natural grass would otherwise be installed, including sports fields, residential areas, and commercial developments. With that, we had to create a definition for grass. Grass means natural living vegetation consisting of perennial turf-forming species suitable for the use of ground cover and lawns, landscaped areas, and open spaces. Grass does not include artificial or synthetic turf. Any questions on this amendment?
To clarify, does this apply only to non-residential uses?
Well, we can't dictate what a residential use, if they wanted to rip up their things and rip up their turf and put it in, they're allowed to do that. So yes, it does only apply to non-residential uses. Yes. All right, I'll move on to the next amendment. All right, this amendment is to amend the shared off-street parking and loading parking lot design standard table. This is a table that designates the amount of parking that is required when there's shared parking instituted. What it does is it breaks it up during days of the week and times of day. So essentially you'll have a requirement for a use between the working hours of a weekday, evening hours, weekend hours between like 9 and 5, and then you'll have evening hours for the weekend as well for that use. And so we're amending that. I apologize that I jumped ahead to the wrong amendment. We'll talk about this amendment first, which is also equally as important. This one is for gravel parking lots, for overflow parking for churches and places of worship. This is only for churches, places of worships, and assembly halls nonprofit located within the residential, agricultural, or rural residential zoning districts. So the first amendment for this one is in Article 8 as well, under parking lot design standards, under service and maintenance. There's an exception area. We've added a new section F, overflow parking areas serving a church or place of worship or an assembly hall nonprofit use that is located within the residential agricultural district or the residential rural zoning district, provided the overflow area does not exceed 25% of the total number of required provided parking spaces on site, whichever is greater, and complies with the gravel construction standards listed below. Those standards are listed here under number 2. In order to be considered pervious, gravel parking areas shall be constructed and maintained in compliance with the North Carolina General Statute 143-214.7D, including all applicable stormwater, sedimentation, and erosion control requirements, and shall remain in a stable, dust-free condition otherwise. There has been, otherwise, gravel parking shall, at a minimum, meet the following specifications. These are not changing, but we'll go through them just so you're aware of them. Compacted subgrade, 6 inches of aggregate base course, 1.5 inches of number 78M stone, and drive aisles must be repaired or replaced with the same stone every 6 months. Any questions on the gravel parking amendment?
I've one small question. If somebody is in the county right now and they get annexed or want to be annexed, would they then have to bring their parking lot up to this standard?
If they are, so if it's an existing nonconformity and they're not expanding or changing the use whatsoever, typically that's not required. What happens is they'll bring the property in annexation and there'll be some form of redevelopment of the site or some kind of expansion of the use. Typically that's when you might see a jurisdiction look at that and say that you need to essentially bring it up to code. Apex doesn't do that per se, particularly. What this will happen is if there's a church that annexes the property who annexes into the town and they decide that they want to have excess parking and they want to use gravel, they'll be able to implement this standard here.
Okay, thank you.
Great question.
All right, we'll move on to the very last one, which I already spoke on. Again, this is to update this table to reflect what we feel are more market acceptable requirements for the shared parking table. I'll show you here on the table. It's easy to explain this way. This here is the shared parking table in Chapter 8. The two uses in question are for bank and for medical/dental office. It's for the weekend hours. Originally, the requirement was for 100% for both of these during the daytime hours of 6 a.m. and 5 p.m. For the shared parking. So that means whatever they would be required, they're required to have 50 spaces during normal operation Monday through Friday. They're required to have the 50 spaces on Saturday and Sunday as well during this time period. I don't know how many of you have visited your bank on the weekend or maybe a doctor's office. That's typically not the main time of day that they're receiving business. It's usually they're only open for a few select hours or it's by appointment only, like very select services are being done at that time. So out of requests and speaking with developers in the area and looking at the general demand up for those uses at that time, we've recommended adjusting these totals. So for bank, we're recommending that this drop from 100% on the weekend to 5% between the hours of 6 a.m. and 5 p.m. And then for the medical office, we're recommending that this be decreased from 100% to 10% for that same time period. Any questions related to that?
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
And it says the shared parking demand. Can you define exactly for other people to use possibly? Is that?
Yeah, so say you have a shopping strip,
Sure.
and say you have all these different units to be leased. So what will happen is each use, say you have a restaurant, you have a barber, you have a gym. They'll all have different parking ratios that they have to meet. So say your restaurant has to provide a parking space for every 4 chairs or something like that to that effect. And your gym only has to provide parking based off the square footage of their building itself. So there'll be different things. And so one way that people work around this is that they'll do shared parking. So there'll be one giant parking lot and they'll demonstrate that their particular use is able to be accommodated using that shared parking at different times.
Makes perfect sense.
Yes, sir.
Questions?
All right, that's we have site plan exemption number 4. This one, so right now under the site plan process in Chapter 2, there are exemptions for site plans to not have to come in under the minor or major site plan applications. There's been some confusion with some of the wording for what can be exempted or exactly when something is exempt, what process has to go through. So this amendment is to address that and provide some clarity, and I'll show you exactly what I mean right here. So originally, the language was any development or activity that is exempt from site plan review pursuant to this section here. Below shall not be undertaken without administrative approval. There was some confusion on what administrative approval meant, so we've acted proactively here in this case to add some explanation here. So administrative approval of what is called an exempt site plan and that must be approved by the planning director. So that's just to provide some extra clarity so people understand what's expected of them when they come in for this process. And that's it.
Okay. Any other questions for Bruce? We will be voting on these one by one or all at the same time?
You can vote on them all together unless there's anything you need to specifically pull out to vote on separately. If there's anything you think should be changed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions on any of the amendments?
Nope, I feel like we addressed our questions as Bruce presented, and he did a great job presenting all those amendments.
He sure did. Very clear.
Which sounds like a motion.
That sounds like a motion to me.
To approve item number 2 under new business, the various amendments regarding the UDO.
We have a motion to approve by Alyssa. Is there a second?
Second with Christie.
Second from Christie. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All that oppose? Motion carried. Thank you, guys. I think we have one more motion, please.
I can make that motion. Motion to be dismissed.
We have a motion to adjourn by Sarah. Do we have a second?
By Christie.
Second by Christie. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All that oppose? Motion carried. Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yes.
Great first meeting.
Thank you.
Flawlessly and